Hey, it's Gentle K, your tech guide. Today, let's break down SQL versus NoSQL. These are the two database shapes an AI tool quietly picks for you, and I'll show you how to tell which one your project actually needs. Let's get into it. Have you ever asked an AI tool to just build you an app, and it quietly set up a database for you? If it reached for Supabase, that's PostgreSQL underneath. If it reached for Firebase, that's a document database. But you never actually picked it. You just half heard somewhere that one of them is the newer, better choice. And that one little assumption is exactly how people end up fighting their own database a few months later. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to look at any project and know in about 10 seconds which one it really needs. Here's the whole idea in one line. What separates SQL and NoSQL is really just one thing: the shape of your data. Not old versus new. Not better versus worse. Just the shape. Get the shape right, and the choice almost makes itself. Every app you build is quietly asking one question about your data, so let's start there before we split it into two. Every app you build ends up storing data somewhere. Your users, their orders, the photos they upload, all of it has to live somewhere. That somewhere is a database. But here's the thing, a database isn't just a warehouse where you pile stuff up. The whole point is how neatly you organize it as it goes in. So I like to think of a database as an organized store. And when you're vibe coding, the AI makes that organizing decision for you. Pick Supabase, and it lays your data out in tables, which is PostgreSQL. Pick Firebase, and it stores it as documents. So the real question was never whether to store your data, it's how you organize it on the way in. And that is exactly where the road splits in two. Now here's the single thing that actually decides which of those two roads you should take, and I'll show it to you right now. The two roads have names: SQL and NoSQL. A SQL database stores your data in tables. Just picture a spreadsheet. The columns are fixed, like name, email, and age, and whoever adds a new row fills in those same columns. So it's predictable, and it's easy to line records up against each other. That fixed set of columns has a name. It's called a schema. In plain terms, a schema is just the fixed shape every record has to follow. A NoSQL document database is more like a folder full of differently shaped notes. One note just has a phone number. Another has a shipping address and 3 photos stapled to it. The shapes are all different, and you just drop each one into the folder. Quick note on that name, by the way. NoSQL doesn't mean there is no SQL at all. It's usually read as not only SQL. It's the family of databases that don't force everything into fixed tables, and the most common kind is this document style. And one of those notes, a document, is basically one JSON blob, where the fields can differ from record to record. So the core contrast is right here. Fixed structure, or free structure. That one line decides everything else. Let me take it one step deeper. When a schema is set, the database can stop bad data at the door and say, hey, this column is empty. So your data stays neat. A document store doesn't block any of that. Anything goes in, which is freedom, but the job of keeping things consistent quietly moves on to you. And here's why that matters so much. How hard it is to change your mind later comes straight from this. If you started with a table and suddenly want to add a new field to just one member, you have to touch the whole table's structure. With documents, you just tack one more field onto that single document and you're done. But the price of that freedom is a mess waiting to happen, where some documents have a field and others don't. Remember fighting your database a few months later? This is exactly where it starts. All right, let's take those two pictures and connect them straight to real projects, because this is where the choice actually shows up. In that spreadsheet, one row is one record, and the real superpower of SQL is linking sheets together. Say you connect an order sheet to a customer sheet by a customer number. That is what a join is. Why is that powerful? Because you never have to copy the same data all over the place. The customer's info lives in the customer sheet exactly once, and an order just points to it by number. Now let's get a feel for it with 3 quick examples. 1. Say you're building a social app with AI. Everybody's profile is different. Some people have a bio, some don't, some have a nested list of hobbies. Try to force that into a table and you get a mess of columns, half of them filled in and half of them empty. So this one leans document, like Firebase or MongoDB. 2. Say you're building a shop with AI. Here, orders and customers and payments all have to connect precisely. One order ties to one customer with several products under it. Data that has to interlock like that is where SQL, like PostgreSQL, belongs. Build it with documents instead, and you would be copying the customer's info into every single order. The moment they change one address, you're hunting down dozens of copies to fix. 3. Think about a bank. Every transaction has to be exact, and everything has to line up without a single mismatch. That's SQL, no question. In fact, keeping data like that safe is the whole reason SQL was built. And one thing worth pausing on, SQL is not the old option. PostgreSQL alone is the #1 database developers use. 55.6% of them reach for it. Next to MySQL at 40.5% and MongoDB at 24%, it is way out in front. And that is exactly why AI tools so often grab SQL by default. All right, you have got the shapes down. So let's turn that into an actual call. When do you pick each one? And where do people slip up? Let's start with the trade-offs. 2 of them. SQL is strong on consistency and relationships. It's perfect for data that has to connect, like money and orders. The price you pay is that you have to decide the shape up front. You design the schema first. NoSQL is the opposite. It's flexible and you can start fast. You figure out the shape as you go, which is handy for messy nested data. The price there is that you lose those guarantees. Keeping things consistent is now on you. Now, 2 mistakes people actually make. First mistake, you pick NoSQL because it looks newer and easier, and then it turns out your data was actually deeply connected. Orders tied to customers tied to payments. Start that as documents, and later you're stitching all those connections back together by hand. Second mistake, thinking you have to marry one of them forever. Real apps use both all the time. The big services keep the data that can never be wrong, like accounts and payments, in SQL, and they keep the high-volume, free-form stuff, like chat messages and activity logs, in a document store. So it isn't SQL or NoSQL for the whole app. It's which side is this piece of data on, one at a time. So remember that 10-second call I promised you? It comes down to one look. Is my data uniform and connected? That's SQL. Is it varied and standalone? That's NoSQL. That's the whole thing. So how does this actually come up between real people? Here's a founder who vibe-coded an app, showing it to a developer friend.
The AI set this up on Firebase. That's fine, right? I keep hearing everyone uses Firebase now.
Depends on the data. What are you storing? Orders, customers, payments.
Yeah, exactly. Every order is tied to a customer and a few products.
That's the exact thing SQL was built for. Those connections stay consistent on their own. On Firebase, you'd be stitching them by hand. And later, some documents have a field and others don't. And pages start crashing.
Oof. So do I have to tear down everything I've built?
Not all of it. The freeform stuff, like photos and reviews, can stay on Firebase. You just move the core, the orders and payments, over to PostgreSQL. Using both is honestly the normal setup.
All right, we covered a lot. So let's pull the 3 things that matter into one place. Here's what to remember. A database is just an organized store, and SQL and NoSQL are 2 shapes for it. SQL is a spreadsheet, strong when your data is uniform and connected. NoSQL is a folder of documents, strong when your data is varied and standalone. It's not about better or worse, it's about fit. Uniform and connected, go SQL. Varied and standalone, go NoSQL. And that's everything for today. I hope this one helped. If it did, I'll see you in the next one. That's it from Gentle K. Thanks for watching, and remember, just start. It's easier than you think.